The one thing I would say that I want to celebrate with AUI turning 50, we're a 50-year-old third generation family business started by my grandmother. We are doing in celebration of that 50 of illness throughout the year. And that is being employee driven, which I really am enjoying. We're on like Act 10 right now. Continuing to collect different donations for different organizations, volunteering our time in the community. I mean, one of our tenets, our core values is community, and our motto is do good, be good.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Chrissy Myers, who's going to share her story of resilience. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day, to have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward. How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want, to be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote comes from Jim Rohn. Character is a quality that embodies many important traits, such as our integrity, courage, perseverance, confidence, and wisdom. Unlike your fingerprints that you're born with and can't change, character is something that you create within yourself, and you must take responsibility for changing. That's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Chrissy's going to share examples of how she did this, and maybe there's some takeaways that you can deal with. Let's face it, life is going to throw us curveballs and strikes. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And then the question is, how do you handle it? Are you resilient enough to get through it? See, you don't lose until you give up. So the real question is, how do you not give up? How do you create a life that is able to withstand greater adversity should it happen? The side effect is a lot more fun in daily life. And that's our topic today. Chrissy is the author of the book Reluctantly Resilient. She's CEO of AUI and Clarity HR. They provide insurance and HR benefits to small and medium-sized businesses. She describes herself as the chief cheerleader for both companies, setting direction, the marketing content, and finding creative ways to disrupt the business sector. And she'll talk about that, the different things that she's faced and how she got through them. Listen in and let's find out. Let's meet Chrissy. Welcome to Richer Soul, Chrissy Myers. It's great to meet you today.
Well, thank you, Rocky. I am so happy to be here.
And I am excited for our conversation. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Oh, well, I grew up in a family business. So I grew up with the thought of, if you want a car, you'll work for us. If you want us to pay for college, you'll work for us. So for me, money was stuff and stuff was action. So it required me to work. And then in school growing up, I would say I did accounting in high school, like starting to talk a little bit about money and giving. I grew up in Christian school, so we talked a lot about tithing. So knowing how to budget. Dave Ramsey was just coming into fruition, into his glory at that point in time. So living on the evangelical Christian school space, that is where I learned about money, was family business, Dave Ramsey, and tithing.
So Dave taught you how to stay out of debt and save your money.
Yes. And have mild anxiety around spending and that worry that all debt is bad. So I've had to relearn some things as an adult.
It's true. And, I always struggled with Dave because Dave would always say, buy real estate for cash. And I could never figure out, how do you buy real estate for cash? And then how do you buy the next one? And it wasn't until I went down and I went through his training for master coaching. And then I think it was slightly after that I came to the aha. Dave runs a highly, highly, highly profitable business. He takes the profit out of his business and he buys real estate, which is a phenomenal idea. But Dave never tells people, you really shouldn't work for people because you'll be stuck. Like, go start a business and make lots of money, and then you can do that. And so it took a while to figure that one out. But as you said, yeah, when you have your own opportunities, you do that. So did your parents teach you about saving and spending, or was it just more, hey, if you want something, we'll show you how to earn it?
So kind of a both and. So we talked about saving. I had an allowance for a period of time as a kid. I was never a spender. So they had the incentive for, we will pay you not to watch television. So you get like $5 at the beginning of the week and 25 cents for half an hour. I refused to watch TV then because I wasn't going to pay for it. So they taught us how to save, how to spend accordingly. I would say my dad was a really good teacher in budgeting, how to budget for large expenditures over time. So when they bought the house that we moved into when I was in junior high, we had the conversation around, this is a 3 structured balloon payment deal. And knew all about how he was going to do a non-traditional finance purchase of our home. So, there were times where we talked about money, and then there were other times where we absolutely didn't. We talked about it to each other, but outside of the family and the extended family, we didn't talk about money, only inside those 4 walls with the 4 of us.
Interesting. And I have found that people who come from entrepreneurial business owner families, there's a greater tendency, not always, but a greater tendency for money conversations to come about, and also about sometimes showing kids how to make money by working in the business. So kind of creating that culture or that mindset that you can have the things you want, but there is a trade-off. And I love the idea of incentivizing the behaviors that you want with your kids, right? Because it's kind of a twofold. A, you're going to spend money on them anyway. So why not at least get something in return without fighting? And then once your kids have money, you don't have to buy them stuff. They're like, you can go buy your own stuff now. You have money. Like, what do you want from me? And it takes so much friction out of everything.
Yeah, I would completely agree. Especially growing up, I did get a car when I turned 16 and I got my driver's license. But the day after I got that car, my parents expected me to commute 45 minutes to a satellite location office to help teach everybody how to use the computer. So everything that I was gifted had an expectation of, you are going to continue to work for it.
Yeah, and payment doesn't always have to be cash, right? Payment can be service in the business. Both my kids have helped within our businesses and doing a variety of different things, from stuffing envelopes to building websites. And as they grow, there's plenty that they can do. And you're teaching them skills that now they can actually go out and use versus what they might learn somewhere else.
And we've done the same thing with our kids. They help with a significant amount of our marketing, which has been helpful over the period of time that we've been growing the business. And I think they've enjoyed it to some degree. They still understand, they get a paycheck, they invested in real estate. So it's learning and how to continue to grow wealth as a family.
Well, cool. So you had a wonderful childhood. You went to a great school. You got all the right knowledge, So was life perfect after that? You
Oh,
went out and you
no.
started. So tell us,
Come on.
what happened?
I mean, life happens in the margins. I mean, I graduated from college, and my dad said, "Do you want to come work for me?" And I said, "No." He said, "Why not?" He said, "Because you've given me every crappy job on the planet. I don't like insurance. I don't like what you're doing." And he said, "Well, will you give me 6 months?" And he said, "No, I'll give you 6 weeks." In those 6 weeks, he gave me everything that I wanted in a position. Um, and then in 2013 or 2010, 2010, our business had what you would call a financial earthquake with the passing of the Affordable Care Act. So our revenues were cut in half overnight, had to figure out how to pivot. My dad took a step back. I took a step forward. He continued to have some declining health. So continued to grow the business, move forward. We transitioned. I purchased the business in 19. He had passed in 16. There's a lot of life that happened in between all of those things, Rocky. So
And it does happen, right? I mean, it is just what it is. And that's the other thing, I think for a lot of businesses, they don't realize that you're going to get sucker punched, whether it's the Affordable Care Act, COVID, health, technology. You look at the iPhone and how many businesses went out like because of, like I used to have a Garmin. It cost me like $300. I got an iPhone. Garmin became irrelevant. I mean, there are probably some things that they do, but even when the iPhone came out, the my Palm Pilot and the BlackBerry. I mean, you're talking big things, just and that happens all over the place. And it could just be, before that, I would think you would hear those complaints when Walmart moved to town because all the local businesses would get thing. And I'm seeing that now we have Sheets out here. There's a couple other big gas station chains that are out there like Buc-ee's and Wawa. When one of them open up on a corner, the local places don't survive well. They have the ability to draw people in. So you got to be ready for that. And be able to do that. And I know you're familiar with Profit First. One of the things I love about Profit First is it allows you to build the cash reserves. And because you have cash reserves, you can do a couple of things. One, you can go invest in real estate. That's how you pull money out. But two, when these sucker punches come, they give you a runway. Most entrepreneurs are smart. They know how to pivot like you pivoted. How do we pivot? But we need cash to get us through the pivot. And I think that's one of the keys. How did Profit First kind of work in your life?
So in my life, I was introduced to Profit First a few years ago and realized as I was reading it that it was something that my family had implemented before Mike Michalowicz wrote the book. So they had several different accounts that were very earmarked, some that were very difficult to get to. So I mean, when Mike talks about have it at a bank where it's very difficult to pull money from and it becomes in essence your savings or your tax account, I was always wondering, like, why do we have this random bank that there's only one branch and we have to drive there and it's not online? It was in early 2000s. And then after reading Profit First, I'm going, oh, this is what Bob and Julie Myers did. They created a Profit First centric model without even realizing it. So it made it easy as we had some of those transitions, and especially during COVID, knowing that that was already how we were operating as a business. I did not have, I think, the same stress that my parents had during the Affordable Care Act with like, okay, how do we make sure everything's where it's supposed to be? I mean, I've said this, my dad has said it. He said it for years when he was alive. It's really easy to run a good business in a good economy. It's really hard to run a good business. And so as someone who's been through several economic downturns, I feel like the values of Profit First stand the test of time, regardless of whether we're up or we're down in our market.
And I think this is the cycle that most business owners don't realize. Everyone does well in a good market, but normal business cycles are about 7 years. Now, this last business cycle has been abnormally long, but if you go through a business cycle every 7 years, it's no wonder most businesses don't make it to 10 years because the moment they hit the down business cycle, they get wiped out. And if you can ride that wave, not only do you come out the other side alive, but because you were going through it, you get to pick up all your competitors' businesses who went out, and you become so much stronger. People don't realize you don't grow in good markets. You actually grow market share in bad markets. That's when you're able to really take off, and you have to be prepared for it. The funny thing is, profit first is actually the same principles that Dave Ramsey taught you. It's the envelope system. It's those same concepts. Mike just took it and applied it to businesses, but otherwise it's the same concept of how you be able to do that.
You're right. That's a very good comparison. That makes total sense.
Yeah. So we're here today to talk about resilience. What inspired you to write the book, Reluctant Resilience?
So a few things. I mean, part of it was the story of entrepreneurship. So in 2020, I think when everybody was a little bored trying to figure out what to do, um, I was thinking about, how do we stay inspired and how do we deal with the calm and at the same time the storms that we have in life. And so I was prepared for COVID because of the things that happened to me in 2013. 2013, I had a professional and a personal hurricane. So we had the launch of the Affordable Care Act. In October of 2013, went live with a government website that nobody knew if it was going to work or not. But 30 days before that, I had lost my first husband to suicide. And so I was dealing with the impact of a family trauma and a professional trauma in tandem. And so dealing with those ups and downs in life is really why I wrote the book, was to kind of talk about, we're always going to have those things that impact us, whether it is the death of a loved one, a major impact in our business. I mean, the transition of a family business from one generation to the next. And so what are the things that you need as a business owner to keep you resilient and successful? And resilient doesn't always mean that you run into a storm super excited. That's why I said reluctantly resilient, because some of these things you don't do because you want to. You do because you have to. So I think there are two things as a business owner that we really need to be successful and resilient. One is a what else beyond profit that drives us to be a business owner. What is that purpose? And sometimes it's really intangible. It's tangible in the business. You know exactly what it is. And sometimes we make profit so that we can continue to give back to the community, because serving the community is just as important as doing business. So that's number one. And number two, and it's something that I think a lot of our big professional like EOS and those types of things are starting to kind of hint on, is that the mental health of the small business owner is vitally important to the small business itself. Because if we are not taking care of our own mental health and ourselves as the owner and driver of the business, how are we going to be in service to our clients and our team members? So those are the two things I think are really important. A what else for your business, and building those interpersonal effectiveness skills so you can take care of your own mental health as you go through those ups and downs in business ownership.
And so one of the things we talk as a core tenet on Rich Your Soul is you need to know your purpose, right? You actually have to write it down and be crystal clear. And when I get a new client, we spend our first call not talking about their business. We talk about them, how they got to where they are. Like, what are the past habits that we're going to have to work on? And where do you want to go? Because if your business isn't serving you, like, too many people go into business to make money. And when things get hard, they give up. Or the other thing is, if there's two business owners and one of them happens to love what they're doing in their business and the other guy's just trying to make money, who are you going to want to do business with? Who do you think is going to improve themselves in their businesses? Because it's about doing the work, not about making money. And when you bring that together, I think it's pretty powerful. So question, because I think that part, well, I think it's easy. I know for a lot of people, it's a massive struggle. How do you, like, what do we look at from a mental health perspective? Like, what do we do to become resilient?
Oh, there's so many things, Rocky, that I think there's there's the I want to go to therapy, I need to talk to somebody. And then there's people that say, I don't ever want to talk to anybody, but what do I need to do? So there's physical activity, there's giving yourself space away from the business, creating boundaries around when you will work and when you will not work and have balance. When I talk to family businesses that are in transition and they're like, how do I build a business that my kids want to take from me? I'm like, it's really easy. You have to have a good relationship with your kids first, not your business. It's not about your business. It's about the relationship you have with your kids.
Well, but here's the thing. Just, and I think this is the one thing though, your kids may want to do something else.
Yes.
And so they may not want your business, not because of that. It's because they just have other goals. And I think this is the mistake some people make. Like, don't build a business for your kids, build a business for you. And if they're interested, great. But otherwise, trying to pull them in, you're going to force them to live a miserable life because they're not doing, their why doesn't match, right? Which goes back to where we started on that.
Yes, that's exactly right. Finding alignment in value, alignment in vision. And I mean, not every family member is ever going to want to transition into the family business. But primary to that, I also think if you don't have a healthy relationship with your family and your business in tandem, they're never going to want to work in the business. So I mean, of course, if they want to be a doctor and you make widgets, they're probably not going to be in your business ever. But if they like making widgets, but you're a workaholic and you spent no time with them growing up, and now you expect them to do the same thing and they're growing their family, it's not going to happen.
So how do you create that harmony between the business and the family and put up the wall? Because what I find is most people find it very, very easy to say, well, I need to go to work because I need to make money because I need to take care of my family and give them what they need. And the reality is what they need is you home hugging them, not buying them another video game.
So I would say it comes back to something that you've already talked about, and that's purpose. So at AUI and Clarity, we have a purpose statement that is, we provide peace of mind by simplifying the complicated. Our family, Team Awesome Sauce, that's our name, has a purpose statement of, we radiate awesome to the world. So when we talk about what our core values are as a family and what our core values are as a business, it is really important that as the business owner, we're congruent in both places. So I look at our business as an extension of me and an extension of the values that I have in Team Awesome Sauce. And then I also carry into AUI and Clarity HR, because it's important that we have uniformity, because mom at home and mom at work, for me, need to be the same people.
And they do. You know, I just did a LinkedIn Live before we went on. And I always like to use a question from The Road Less Stupid. And today's question was, what changes must I make to our culture if these problems are to be fixed once and for all? And I tell business owners, you have a culture. If you didn't create it, somebody else did. And the only one to blame that you don't like it is you. What are you going to do to fix it? Because I got to tell you, it takes a lot of work to change culture, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. Especially as someone who lives in the HR space, in organizations that may or may not have paid a lot of close attention to their culture and may have a few rogue actors in their team. Fixing culture can be very challenging. So it's important, if you're setting it from the beginning, we're creating those clear boundaries and purpose. It's so important, not just to have it, but then to hold it. I would say it's more important to hold it than it is to just have it.
And I agree with that. It's funny because you see a lot of companies, especially in Christian companies, they got this big, saying up on the wall. And, we believe in this. And then you just ask them one simple question. Can you give me an example of how you model it? Can you show me in your day-to-day that actually happens? And It doesn't. And the other thing I tell business owners is you hire to culture because you can always train for whatever your needs are, but you cannot train culture into somebody. And I think that's where a lot of times we just hire because we need somebody and we don't hold our culture.
Oh, you're right. I think that one of the things that we say at Clarity HR a lot is that so many business owners treat hiring as last call at the bar, and nobody wants to go home lonely. So we will take whoever is there, and it never serves you well in the long run. It is really important to hire slow and fire fast.
So are there any tips of how do you create and then maintain culture without it becoming your daily job?
I would say yes. And I think part of it is just it's a framework. So we call it our 3 keys to clarity. And there's just 3 really simple statements where you're just kind of thinking them in the background as you're making decisions around your people and your processes. The first is your business is your baby. So oftentimes, those of us that have team members, we think that our accountability is primary to the people that work for us or the people that we employ. And I would say that is not accurate. Your primary purpose and care is for the business itself. So what your business is your baby, the individuals that work for you are the caretakers of your baby. So you have to think about, how am I hiring these individuals as, in essence, babysitters? And there are going to be different levels and different levels of expertise that we're going to want to hire for and have support. So, sometimes that lower level employee maybe doing data entry, I don't need them to be, a PhD level student. I don't need them to be an au pair who's going to watch my baby constantly. However, my accountant, my CFO, I need them to have a much higher level of expertise to care for my baby. So that's one. The second one, of course, is, I said it already, it's to hire slow and fire fast. So you're interviewing and making sure the people that you're hiring to take care of your baby are quite capable. And if you think they're not going to take care of your baby and they're going to harm it, then you need to exit them quickly. And the third is a statement that my dad had said for decades, and I didn't really understand it until I stepped in the seat of business owner. And that is, we're all friends until we're not. And so that speaks... Yeah, you get it, Rocky. It speaks to making sure your policies are in place, but when you get into a situation, you also know how to exit a situation. So making sure that your runway is clear for what you know that you want and what you know that you don't want. You create clear boundaries around it.
And I think managing people is always a struggle.
Yeah.
Do you have some tips to make it easier?
Yes. So let me think of a couple that would be fairly simple. The first is, if we put it in a manual, I know not everybody likes to have paperwork in a handbook, but as an HR professional, I will tell you, not having a handbook can be a detriment to you when you get into a sticky situation. So employee, do we have a paid time off policy? Do we have an attendance policy? No, we just expect everybody to show up and do their job and go home. Well, I appreciate that. But if you didn't hire slow and fire fast, you may be in a situation where you've got someone that isn't meeting the standard. And having things documented as to what needs to happen and when can be extremely beneficial, not just to you as a business owner, but to anybody that you're putting in leadership and management. People like guardrails. And so creating those guardrails is really important to scaling your business and continuing to, I would say, sleep better at night.
And I think many times we don't have an exit policy, right? Or an exit procedure to say, okay, things are not working. We're going to address the situation. Our manual says this is our performance improvement procedure, and we followed it. And I think that's the key, because it seems like today everyone is sue happy, right? You run into a lot of these kinds of issues. And for me, I found prevention is the easiest way.
Absolutely. You prevent, you document, and then when you don't know the answer, don't Google it. Call a professional who can help you, whether that's an HR consultant or an attorney or an accountant. I mean, nobody says that you have to be the expert as the business owner all the time. You just have to know who to call. So I would say that's really important, is to never feel like you're a hostage in your business to make a decision that's the right decision for your business.
Do you find that most business owners feel like they have to do it all and that there's this hesitation to reach out for expert help?
Yeah. But I would say I'm going to caveat it with, I think that until you learn the peace of mind that you get by being able to hand something off, then once you've got that in your brain and you know how it feels, I think you get used to it. But if you are just in business for yourself and you never had that opportunity and no one's made you feel safe enough to turn something over to someone else, then absolutely. I see that all the time. And especially around hiring in HR. That small business owner that has 10 employees, has never had an HR person, doesn't know how to like, just maybe hired people because their business grew and they didn't realize what they were doing was building a team of people. I think those especially, as they continue to scale and grow. I mean, I would think that have you had the same experience, Rocky?
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. I built my business so that I don't have employees. And I did that on purpose.
Fair.
Coming out of corporate, I just realized what a pain that was. And I was like, I don't want to deal with this. What I rather do is hire people who are great at what they do and not have to manage them. So, there's multiple people that handle behind the scenes on this podcast. The first thing I did was systematize everything so that it didn't require a person. And we built those systems out. And then beyond that, though, they now, like, I've really gotten to the point where I used to have to do so much. Like, I'd have to record, then I have to upload and then put it here and then let people know. And now when I'm done, I hit the leave button and everything gets handled behind the scenes. And I have confidence that they will do it. However, we do have checks in place. Like, they do their thing and they go, hey, look at this. Hey, look at that. Or these. And then what used to take me an hour takes me 2 seconds to go, yes, 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 yes. And then I hit the button and it's done. And the same is true in other parts. Like, rather than like, people say, oh, you're so good at the marketing side of what I do. You could hire more people and make more money. I'm like, you know what? I'd rather just refer out. I don't need the money per se. So why not just build a referral program and send people that way? And also being okay to say no. Like, as business owners, we want to help everybody. I have come to learn that, you know what, if they're a certain size, yes, I can help them. They aren't ready usually a lot of times to listen, which creates frustration. And when they look at our fees, they're like, that might not be a good fit. And I agree with them. It is not a good fit for them. So we created a digital product for those people so that takes all the burden off of me. And I'm okay just going, hey, here are your options. You choose. And if you don't want to work with us, that's okay too. Like, I'm okay with all of that. And I also know how much is enough. So we know this is our capacity and we are not going to exceed capacity. And we'll stop there. And if that means our income is limited, I'm accepting of that. I'm okay with that because I do want to go do the other parts of life. and my business is here to serve me. I am not a slave to it. And you got to figure out how that works. And we reverse engineered this entire business to meet my needs. And sorry, I was selfish. We all are.
No, but you make a really good point. I think sometimes, especially business owners that have transitioned, generational business owners, we think that we have to keep things exactly the same, or we don't necessarily see the capacity or the difference that we can move in a different direction. And I would say too, another point I would want to make, especially with family business transition, is that when you make that decision that you're going to buy the business from generation 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, that no one in your family, meaning the person that you're married to or your kids, should be a hostage with you in that business. We don't take hostages when we buy another business or we decide we're going to go in business. We have a conversation as a family. We did this as Team Awesome Sauce. So I was getting ready to purchase AUI for my mom. It was, are we okay with buying this business and continuing moving in this direction? Because it was really buying business and doing a startup at the time. And so we had a family meeting, took the talking stick around the room, and we were all in favor that it was okay, understanding that there might be some different decisions or things that work. We had to work around the cadence and the pattern of what daily life looked like. So when you talk about building a business around you, extremely important. And especially if your business is an extension of family as well. How do you continue to make sure that you've got good boundaries and guardrails? Make sure that everybody is happy that you are now a business owner.
Your spouse needs to be on the same page. I waited till my kids were essentially gone so that it was not pulling me away from doing what I wanted to do with them. And I was okay with that. Again, you have to be okay with the decisions you make. But yeah, I had the conversation with my wife of what the ramp up would look like. Because everyone thinks you go in a business, you make money today. No, it takes time to build a client base. It takes time to hit revenue goals. And then there are hiccups along the way. So, my wife and I had a conversation of what our home life spending would look like when we did that. And in the midst of this, I had 2 kids, and one in college, one going into college. So all of that was planned ahead of time. We were ready for it. It was no big deal. It didn't change our life in a way that would have created stress or resentment. Because if you're trying to sell something, everyone knows if you're stressed and resentful or needy.
Oh, you're so right. And we had a similar conversation at the initial time with Team Awesome Sauce when we bought the business. And then about 6 months in, we had a broader conversation because time had shifted. And I was spending a significant amount of time on the weekends getting organized because my husband was still working in a traditional job where he was going to work very early and I was getting the kids on the bus in the mornings. And so my time was shifting and I was having some issues where I couldn't get as much done as I needed to. So we had a conversation as a family, and this is in Reluctantly Resilient about, where Steve said, if I stay home and can get the kids on the bus, will that eliminate you working on weekends? And I was like, absolutely. Now, Rocky, he didn't know that a week later, the world was going to shut down. The kids were going to come home and he was going to homeschool them for 3 years. But that's okay. I feel like the universe took care of that situation for us in general. But we had a very different dynamic because we continue to have those conversations about how does the business serve us and how do we serve and fit within our family unit and within the business itself.
So, by the way, how was the transition? Because I know, parents who own a business do business their way and their whole life is the business. And now you're coming in as the kid with all these new ideas that we don't feel comfortable with. How did you and your mom kind of make that transition?
Oh, well, there were moments where anybody that says a family business transition is easy, I think is lying. We had that proverbial screaming in the driveway moment of you're going to sell me the business or I'm going to quit. Part of that had to deal with my dad had passed and we were both grieving. It was an interesting space because in 2010, when ACA happened and my dad took a step back, I took a step forward. He continued to have some health issues and was declining. My mom was taking care of him. So in the meantime, I'm running the business, transitioning it. I did an an acquisition that doubled revenue and doubled our size as an organization in a year. And he did not do anything outside of the initial meeting. I handled everything, did the negotiations, did the conversion. So not only did I grow the business, I also created it to be, I had to pay twice what I was going to pay for it initially. So there was that realization. I would say a lot of it is, and then, oh yeah, I changed my title to CEO. And I mean, just decided I was going to change my title. Was director of corporate planning before. So before I'd even bought the business, I decided I was going to be CEO. My dad's like, did you change your title? I'm like, yeah, I did. What are you going to do about it? It's like, nothing. Because at that point in time, I was running the business. I mean, I was probably not the best example for how to slowly transition I don't know if there's a right way to do it. I really don't think there is. I would say this because, as baby boomers continue to age, we've got some interesting demographics around family business transition. There are a lot of family businesses right now that are in that 5 to 10 million range that do not have a succession plan. And so we were one of those organizations. It was, this will all be yours at some point, but never had negotiated on price, never had figured out what was going to happen. And then my dad passes, my mom now has the business and we're trying to figure out what to do. So we arm wrestled in essence for about 3 years. We went to therapy so we could learn how to talk to each other. And then we had to deal with that transition of, this is now my business. It's not hers. And I would say now in 2024, things look really bright. We have a relationship. She's happily retired. I'm running the business the way I want to. But there were moments, Rocky, where it was pretty scary. And I was trying to think do I want to be in this business? I could just go sell shoes. I could go start another business. And Steve and I had those conversations for months. I even went to career mapping to a career coach to say, I don't think I can work with her. I need to figure out what I'm going to do next. And she pretty much said, the career coach, you have everything that you want in a career in this organization. Do you have the stomach to stay or do you want to start over? And so I had to really take a long inventory and go, I really love what we're doing. I love that I've shaped a lot of the business already because I've been running it for 5 years. In essence, alone. And then all of a sudden my mom came back. So we had to figure out how to negotiate and move forward. So it's not clean. It wasn't pretty. It's probably why it's in the book.
It's funny. You made a comment and it triggered this thought. I think most people think, including employees, right? Oh, Chrissy inherited the business. She didn't have to do anything. But the reality is you purchased the business. You had to pay. I'm assuming you paid fair market value.
Absolutely. Fair market value for it. I mean, we seller finance with terms, but I am still paying for this. And I will be for a little bit of time. So yeah, it's been interesting because there are some individuals, I would say more individuals who have never been in a family business that think oh, you just got it. They just handed it to you. I'm like, no, I had to negotiate. I had to go out and do evaluations so I knew what I was going to pay for it. I had to hire my own lawyers, my own accountant, and I had to work through all of these things. The vendors that I had hired to do all of the work for AUI before told me, we're not going to work with you anymore because you are now the purchaser. You have to go find somebody else. I'm like, but I hired all of you. We don't care. You got to find somebody else to do this work. So it was a very interesting dynamic. And I would say there are still individuals that I have to remind that, no, I paid for this business. I'm continuing to pay for this business and I continue to pay all of the expenses as well.
It's amazing the assumptions that people make.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So let's get back to the book. Let's talk a little bit more about resilience. What other themes or issues were presented in the book?
Yeah, so we talk about grief and transition in business, transition in my personal life, building a second family. I mean, meeting Steve and creating Team Awesome Sauce, creating that blended family and becoming an entrepreneurial family. And then really learning as we went through the COVID lessons of, having that what else for your business and how the skills and the work that you put in to building your own interpersonal effectiveness skills, your own mental health skills can be so beneficial because you never know what's going to hit you with life. It could be something, you could lose someone tragically. You could have a major pivot in your business because of government or because of market. And there's always going to be disruptive technology and things are going to be coming at you all the time. That's what we do with business, right? We juggle a lot of different things. We wear a lot of hats and we have to be prepared for anything that may come at us. So how do we build those resilient skills? And as we're transitioning a family business, how do we find our bravery to be able to talk to each other about some of the things that may be uncomfortable? So none of what is in Reluctantly Resilient is if you do this, everything's going to work out, or I figured out the rest of how to survive all of the difficult situations and I've got it figured out. That is not what the book is about. It's more of an I see you. It's a high five to business owners to say, I have not done everything the right way. And here's how some things have worked out. And here's how it's been a disaster. I mean, a great example is I almost burnt my house down because I wasn't paying attention and being mentally present when I was dealing with grief. So that reminder of, sometimes when things derail us, we really need to make sure that we are focused on what is important. And when we get distracted and we're not mindful, it can be dangerous. So fortunately, the barbecuing of my house did not occur. Too bad. Was able to move forward, ran the business, continued to move forward. So
there are some days that I wish my house was barbecued because then I wouldn't have to clean out all the crap we have of 30 something years and the kids' stuff and everything else. It's like, oh, good. We get to start over. I don't have to make those decisions. I start with a clean slate. There's pluses and minuses to everything. How do you instill bravery? How do you become braver?
Oh, I think some of it is a mindset around I'm not always going to enjoy what I have to walk through, but I know that I'm going to be able to get through it. I may not know what it's going to look like, but I know that I can get through it. There is a therapist that I am acquainted with. I serve on a mental health board, and something that she had said was, we have 100% success rate of surviving hard days. And I thought about that. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, every day you wake up is another day that you can move forward. And if you go to bed and you wake up the next day, then, no matter how hard that day was before, you had 100% success rate of surviving hard days. So I think sometimes fostering bravery and courageousness is just being willing to take that next step. And I don't know how everything's going to work out. I mean, right now I am interim CEO for a company that's in receivership. And every day is a battle for that organization as to whether or not it's going to survive. Got a lot of investors and a lot of concerns around it. And I know that I have to walk into a lot of uncertainty, but I also know that I have 100% success rate of surviving hard days, that Team Awesome Sauce loves me no matter what happened. And that my what else and my purpose of making sure that business owners take care of their mental health is going to survive no matter what organization I lead or what type of business I am in. So those are the things that I think help me stay courageous, and I would say I'm cautiously courageous, not necessarily as I am reluctantly resilient, kind of moving forward, not because I want to all the time.
How do you help your employees become more resilient?
Oh, that's a great question. So part of it is, leading by example. But the other is we invest in different tools that help our employees become more resilient and building some of those interpersonal effectiveness skills. So when in 2020 and 2021, we were really working on building resiliency within our own mental health space as a team. And so we invested with another company. They came in and did a series of modules around, how do we have difficult conversation? How do we create boundaries in communication? How do we build relationships? So I think that some of it is the soft skill building, and some of it too is just being willing to listen, being mindful, being present. I think that a lot of times business owners think they have to wear the weight of the world on their shoulders and they can't tell anybody when they're having a bad day. I think that's absolute crap, Rocky. I think it's perfectly fine for other people to know that sometimes you have a bad day and sometimes you need help, and sometimes it's okay to talk to somebody if you need that assistance. It's also okay to take a walk or run on the treadmill, however you need to take care of yourself, as long as you're caring for yourself is what's important.
Just so you know, we can all tell when someone's having a bad day. You don't even have to tell us.
Well, that's it too. And so I think that that's the other part of it, is to be transparent sometimes with your team. I think that there are moments in time, especially as a business grows, where employees think that you as a leader may be unapproachable or you may be impermeable to difficult situations. And I would say that's something that my team has been able to watch in real time because they watch the transition with AUI with my mom and I. They have watched me continue to grow. I mean, there are some individuals that are still with me on our team that were here when I lost my first spouse when Michael died. And so they've watched me do life, and I've watched them do life. And I think that that's really important. And we're not crossing professional boundaries when we say, are you doing okay today? Is there anything I can do to help make your day a little bit easier? Do you just want to talk to me for a minute? I mean, I think that that's important. Or, hey, it looks like you're having a rough day. You want to go to Starbucks and get a coffee, and then we'll just kind of walk back, and then we can start the rest of our day maybe in 15 minutes. I think that that's perfectly fine. I think sometimes as business owners, we forget that we also are humans and we employ humans, and we can also be human too, to each other.
When I was in corporate, what I found was when they offered soft skill training, people didn't appreciate it. Most people just didn't seem to care. And I don't know if it's that they didn't care or if it's because, oh, here's another program that we're going to watch and no one's going to follow. And it's, what came first, the egg, the, chicken.
You're right. And I think that sometimes, especially as business owners, we forget how important it is to address presenteeism. So presenteeism is a multi-billion-dollar loss to employers every year. And part of that is I am at my job, but I am not doing my job because I may be watching a video on TikTok, or I may be checking an email on a dating site. But the other side of presenteeism is I'm worried about something at home. I had an argument with my spouse that's occupying my mental space. I have a child that is struggling at school, and I don't know how to fix that situation. If we address and build resiliency with those soft skills so that individuals can be more mentally present at work, I think we forget as business owners that mentally present at work also translates into dollars and a more profitable business. So not only are we making the employee more successful because they're present in their daily work, we're also making them more successful in their daily life. So they have a better work-life balance because we're giving them the soft skills to be able to solve some of the problems at home and sometimes the challenges that they have at work. So it's a great congruence of where we can kind of work in the full spectrum of the person. We're not just working on their work life, we're working on their whole life.
Interesting. I know with my clients, one of the conversations we always have is how healthy are your clients? Because if their clients aren't healthy, and I don't mean health-wise, I mean financially, if their clients are struggling or dealing with economic issues, A, they may not pay the AR, right? B, if you lose them as clients, what happens to you? And, one of the niches that I've worked in a bit was marketing. And I'll tell you, last year for marketing agencies across the board got clobbered. As a matter of fact, the last conversation I had with someone, he said the marketing agencies that did best just broke even, and that was it. Many of them had to let people go, or going out of business. It was terrible. So if you don't understand what your clients are dealing with, you're going to get surprised. So I think that's part of it. The area that I don't focus on, because I don't do people management, but that's the reality. If you hire a single dad or a single mother and they've got young kids get sick, COVID really messed things up, or they can't make their car payment, or cost of living has skyrocketed for a lower paid employee. If you can't feel their pain and understand and figure something out, and it goes even back to Dave Ramsey. Like, most people don't understand money. So if they're not good with their money at home, they might not also be, it creates things that ripple through. I mean, it's all money stress, and I don't know, what's the other stress everyone has? Kids stress, money, kids relationship, right? If you're not aware of, then that's a problem. And then sometimes it's just having the understanding and helping them. I know some companies actually create loan funds where they have a fund available specifically so that if an employee gets in trouble or needs $800 to fix a car or the heat or this or a medical bill, they can go to the loan fund and then they pay it back over time. And people have said that by creating that, they actually have less issues. Everyone's always worried about losing money, but they have less issues, better, just better culture and everything else that kind of goes along with it. And yeah, there's going to be bad apples. It always happens.
It happens. That's why we have procedures. But the other part is what enables us to make employees sticky and what enables us to help employees to stay in an organization. Because one of the big cost drivers we have is when someone exits. I mean, the cost to replace an employee, it can be astronomical depending on if it's a key position. I mean, and even you think about 20 to 40% of their salary is what is in that continued startup cost to replace that employee. So it's really important to kind of think about as you're building your business, how do you build a culture? How do you build an organization? And then at the same time, how do you build employees? Because we deal with personal development. Personal development helps make people more sticky to an organization. How do we build the employees that we want to keep in our organization as well?
I think too often business owners do what they do with everything else. They throw money at the problem. If I just pay them more. I can't tell you how many times we've had this conversation. They hand out bonuses and increase pay and productivity goes down.
Correct. Because what are you incenting for? It's really important that you know, why are you paying what you're paying and why are you bonusing? And it can't just be because I thought I was going to. I think they're doing okay. There have to be measurables and metrics in place. Otherwise, yes, you're exactly right. We're throwing money at something. We're literally flushing money down the toilet because we're not getting any increased input or output.
And that happens a lot. Is there anything that we should have talked about but didn't get a chance to?
I feel like we have covered the gamut from small business HR to family business ownership to finding your what else business. The one thing I would say that I want to celebrate with AUI turning 50, we're a 50-year-old third generation family business started by my grandmother. We are doing in celebration of that 50 acts of kindness throughout the year. And that is being employee driven, which I really am enjoying. We're on like Act 10 right now, continuing to collect different donations for different organizations, volunteering our time in the community. I mean, one of our tenets, our core values is community, and our motto is do good, be good. So my highlight would just be that I am so appreciative of the team that I have, that this is something that they have decided to take on as a group to kind of say thank you to the customers and clients that we have within our organization.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
My secret to living an abundant life is to radiate awesome to the world.
And I think we covered some of how to radiate awesome to the world earlier.
Yes.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
That showing weakness is actually a sign of strength.
It comes back to it, Brene Brown and vulnerability and all of that. And
absolutely.
Being able to do that. Yeah, it's funny. The concept of crying has come up recently in some conversations, and it's how the human body lets go. And yet, for boys especially, they're just told to hold it all in, which is probably why all our teenage boys are all full of rage. They haven't been able to let go. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Find your purpose now instead of waiting until you're 50.
And that is so true. And it's one of our core tenets on, at Rich or So. You got to have the right purpose and you got to figure out what you want from life. And then you got to create the right mindsets. And then all of the rest of this sits on top. If people would like to learn more about you, your services, your book, what's the best way for them to do that?
So best way to find me is on LinkedIn, Chrissy Myers, CEO, also on Instagram. And then you can go to my website, reluctantlyresilientthebook.com, clarityhr.com, or you can email me at Chrissy, CHRISSYM, at clarityhr.com.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Do you have a clear life plan for this moment in your life? Different stages of life have a different focus, and learning to plan long term and understand that there are seasons will allow you to create the ultimate life. Let's face it, there's going to be downturns, but we can also prepare for that. And when we're clear, we have the ability to get through those downturns with greater ease. What's your plan? And where do you need to build resilience in your life? Do you have the financial foundation to deal with tough times? We have plenty of episodes to show you how to do this. Plus, the original episodes way, way back from 8 years ago, they haven't changed. It's the foundation for all of this. By the way, do you know someone who might enjoy today's episode? Would you do me a favor and would you share it with them? I'd appreciate that. Thank you so much. Next week, we've got Mark Murphy on to talk about making the ultimate investment. I know you'll enjoy it. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.